What is up, guys? Jared Spalding here, and today I'm going to be talking about how you can bust through a bench plateau. And it's actually really quite simple, okay? There's going to be many things that could potentially be causing a bench plateau, and I'll go over some of them, how to work on them, all the most common things. But really, there's going to be one of two reasons, or at least primarily, that you are hitting that plateau, and many other, little sub reasons within those that are incorporated. But the two things are going to be either you, and this is going to be 99% of people probably are. So the first one's going to be you have some kind of weak link you're doing, or you're just doing something wrong with the bench, or maybe you've just genuinely reached a point where you can't get stronger. Okay. Now, there are very few people who are possibly at a point where they've reached, with or without steroids, not considering any of that stuff, but they've just reached their genetic limits for the bench press. Maybe they just simply cannot bench anymore. At that point, there's not really anything you can do, okay? But I do think that even, if it takes a year, you might be able to add 5 pounds to your bench still, even if, you're at the very top of where you can reach. But let's look at the much more common thing, and that is simply something wrong with your training. Now, there's going to be many things, and I'll cover a few of them right now for you that are kind of the most common things that I've heard of that could be a mistake in your training. So the first thing is going to be not hitting every muscle on the bench, and I will make a separate video entirely about this, but basically there's a wide array of muscles involved in the bench press that people often neglect. Okay? Now, I'll go over the ones that I think are most vital, and I'll go from most to least obvious, I guess, if you will. But yeah, obviously chest is the first thing. Greatly important in the bench press, especially at the bottom part of the lift. That's a given. If you're benching, you're hitting your chest. Triceps, another very obvious thing that you need to incorporate. Work even beyond the bench press, even beyond the close grip bench. Something I would recommend is relatively heavy but strict form skull crushers. And then triceps are a smaller muscle, so they will actually recover faster, so you can kind of incorporate them on several different days, but maybe only have one day where you specifically really try to work the tricep or just work the arms. Next thing is going to be the upper back, okay? That's often neglected. Very simple thing, do some overhead press, strict overhead press, mind you, or some military press. Another thing is going to be the traps, the shoulder area, and that's more the shoulders need to be strong in order to not get injured while you're benching, because inevitably you do use the shoulder a bit in the bench. You want to, of course, eliminate shoulder use as much as possible, but it is going to happen. The shoulder is going to be getting used a little bit, and definitely something to do is retract your scapula. When everyone says that, basically it means kind of pinch your upper back together. So instead of being like this, you want to kind of pinch it, and then that allows you to push your chest up as well. Because a lot of people, they always say, contract your scapula. Nobody knows what that means, okay? That's basically what it is, though. It's pinching your shoulder blades together, and, I could make a whole video talking about that, because it's actually kind of a interesting setup for that. But anyway, yeah, definitely the shoulder work is essential, because if your shoulders, whatever your weakest point is on the bench, that's going to be the strongest you can get. It is, as strong as your weakest part allows you. But anyway, let's continue on. People often neglect the forearms. These are going to be essential in that if your forearms aren't very strong and you don't have much control over the bar, that's going to make lifting it much harder. Very simple. I would recommend doing some, if you can't deadlift as much weight as you can hold, which is rare, but if that's the case, maybe even use a rack for this. But just pick up a weight, hold it for 30 seconds, do a couple sets of that. Those will kill your forearms. And then holding the weight that you're benching will seem like nothing. Another thing people often don't even think about is the bicep. When you are benching, and you're all the way out, your bicep is still flexed. You're not flexing it obviously as if your arm were up, but when you come out, the bicep is still under pressure, and it still is flexing. So it is very important. You don't have to do a crazy bicep workout. I wouldn't say go and do overload with 200-pound cheat curls or something like that. Obviously, that's just stupid. That's just ego lifting. But there is little things you can do. I would definitely say, especially as a powerlifter, always practice full range of motion on your curls. Make sure you're coming so that on the curl, you're all the way out, because that's the position the arm's going to be. Obviously, the hand's going to be a little bit different than when you're curling, but that bicep's going to be in that fully, contracted position when it's under tension, when you're locking out the weight. So that's definitely the first thing I'd say. As now, if you say, well, I'm still at a plateau, but am working every single muscle that you've mentioned. I'm working everything involved in the bench press. The only other thing I would make sure to say is that doesn't mean go and skip leg day. Like I am a bench only powerlifter, but I still have to squat because you have to use leg drive when you bench. That's just simply it. I mean, if you want to be as strong of a bencher as possible, at least you want to be explosive at the bottom. You don't want to get stuck halfway up because you have no momentum. You need to use leg drive. I mean, that is just such a simple thing to say, but it is very difficult to incorporate, I know, but it is essential to a stronger bench press. But like I said, if you feel you're hitting every muscle involved in the bench, you're doing everything like that right, it could very well be your technique, okay? Let's go back to leg drive. Maybe that's what's holding you back. Maybe you're stuck at this weight because you are imbalanced since your feet are not, giving you any kind of support. And a lot of times there is little things you'll find that you aren't doing that don't just let you get a little bit stronger, but beyond breaking through your plateau, they allow you to continually get stronger. It's just that little thing that you weren't doing. So using leg drive, retracting your scapula, like I mentioned, is another vital thing to do when bench pressing. And beyond that, I mean, just try to control the weight. I do let the weight come down relatively fast myself because the less time you're under the bar, the more you're going to be able to lift, or the easier you're going to be able to lift, like a heavy single. I mean, that's just simply because the longer you're under the bar, the more pressure there's going to be on the nervous system, the more ATP you're using bringing the bar down before you can even lift the bar back up, and therefore you're wasting energy. That's simply it. That doesn't mean that you should turn your rib cage into a trampoline, or something like that. Obviously, you should let the weight come down quickly, but control it as it gets to the bottom, and also as you get to the bottom, therefore build that elastic tension, like you're kind of benching like a rubber band almost when you get to the bottom, and then when you come back up, the rubber band, it comes back, and it's going to be the same thing with your bench. You're building tension as you're being, I guess, obviously a rubber band, as the stretch comes out farther, you're coming in closer to your body, but it's kind of like, I guess, a reverse rubber band. But yeah, you're building tension, and then you want to explode back up, and that's, again, where leg drive comes in, because you're not going to be pushing with your legs as the bar comes down, because that would make the bar harder to bring down, since that's why the leg drive is so effective, is because, they say for every every action there's a equal and opposite reactions. So when you push with force into the floor, there's opposite force pushing, back up, and that's going to be what allows you to push the bar up, or push more weight with the bar up, right? Because there's a reason why you have to use a bench to bench. You can't just bend over like backwards and then try to bench, because what you're doing is you're pushing the bar up, but the bar is also pushing you back down into the bench. So being planted into the bench is going to help, and then using that leg drive to create an opposite force is also going to help greatly. But overall, I mean, if you really feel as though you're doing everything right, you're using all the little techniques, you're hitting every muscle, everything like that, and your bench isn't progressing, the only other thing I could say is that it might be you aren't treating outside of the gym seriously enough. If you want to get stronger on any lift and to a very strong level, you simply have to dedicate more than just the time you're in the gym to lifting. You're going to have to dedicate research into the best supplements and actually try them, see which ones your body responds best to. You're going to have to dedicate time outside of the gym into, meal preps every day, creating them, going to the store and physically buying the stuff, and you're gonna have to dedicate money into buying all that stuff as well. But it's definitely a huge commitment. I mean, I myself eat 5 meals a day, so I'm not one of those people that's 8 meals a day or something like that. But I find that's what's works best for me, because they're kind of I eat them around my workout, if you will. Obviously I eat breakfast when I first wake up. I'll eat lunch, and then I'll eat my pre-workout meal, which is going to be a smaller meal, but it's heavy in carbs. And then I'll eat dinner when I'm done working out, and then I'll eat my recovery meal. That's going to be very heavy in protein. That's kind of the way I go about it. And both my pre-workout meal and my recovery meal are going to be, a little bit different than my other meals because they're very based around the workout. So that's kind of how I incorporate other meals into it. But just in general, yeah, you need to make sure that you are dedicating as much time as you possibly can, as you possibly have to allot to, I should say, your training both in and outside of the gym. Make sure, just because you feel as though you don't have, 100% that day to give in the gym, give 100% of what you have that day to the gym. You don't have to give 100% of your best day ever, because you'll find down the line, 6 months later, your very best day is going to be worse than what your very worst day would have been in 6 months if you had trained every single day or every day you needed to for your program with 100% of what you can do. So with that being said, I hope this helps you if you're stuck in a bench plateau. I know that this video is very general, so that, obviously you as a specific individual might have certain needs that this video simply does not meet, certain things that you still are wondering. And if that is the case, please feel free to shoot me a DM on Instagram, excuse me. My Instagram handle is @JSPowerlifting. And yeah, if you do have any questions, just tell me you saw this video and you wanted to know something. Tell me exactly what your question is. I will do whatever I can to help you. I have plenty of time myself to help other people if I can. With that being said, I do hope you enjoyed the video. That is it for this one. Peace, love, much respect.